My dad was out for a job interview, so me and my sister had the place to ourselves for about 2 hours. I watched TV downstairs and went outside, and when I went back in, I left the door unlocked for my dad. It was close to the time that he said he'd be home, so it made sense to do that. I went upstairs and hung out with my sister for a while. I heard the front door open and rummaging through cabinets as well. I just assumed that it was my dad, since he always liked to check everything is in place before he relaxed. I also heard my dad's door open and close, albeit slowly, a few times. I was talking with my sister when the phone rang. To my surprise, it was my dad on the other end. He told me that he was going to be getting home late and that we needed to make our own dinners. It felt like my heart fell to my feet as he said that. I realised that it wasn't my dad that had earlier entered our home. I hurriedly rushed downstairs to see if everything was okay. Several things were gone and the front door was wide open. I then heard what sounded like breathing coming from the downstairs bathroom. I choked the urge to yell as I saw a hand wrap around the door and a face peer around my corner. As soon as the guy saw me, he ran like hell out of there. I chased after him, but he was long gone. On the floor in the bathroom, I found later, of all things, a box cutter knife. I'm not sure what his intentions were with the weapon, but they weren't good if anything. I called police soon after, but they could never find him. My dad always calls now when he's heading home, to make sure I know he's still gone. The neighbourhood I live in has become steadily worse in the past couple of years. It's always been a slightly rougher area, but no majorly violent incidents, until last January. Whilst my first indication that the neighbourhood was going downhill was my discovery of a ripped out weave in my driveway, the major wake-up call came late one Thursday night in January. The day had gone as usual, and I didn't come home from work until 1 AM or so. I parked my car and headed into my house, locking the doors behind me as usual. Now before I moved to the burbs, I was living in one of the shittier areas of a major city. My mum and my sister, who also live with me, are vigilant about making sure every door and every window, including our garage, are locked. After doing the usual check, I collapsed into bed and fell asleep. Fast forward to 3 AM, I'm awoken by my sister, who's still a kid, climbing into my bed. Something that's only safe for moments of severe emotional upset or nightmares. I ask her what's wrong, and she said that she thought she heard someone in our backyard. I tell her not to worry about it and go back to sleep. She drifts off, and I start to drift off again too, until I'm snapped awake by someone pounding ferociously on the window of my bedroom, shouting for me to get the hell up now. The pounding continues, scaring the hell out of my mum, and my sister is now buried under my covers and not moving. My first thought is, oh fuck, there's an addict at the door and he thinks we have crack, followed by, oh hell no, some crazy ass crackhead is not going to break my windows. Not tonight. Running on pure adrenaline, I leap out of bed and sprint to the door, only to see that there is no one there. I'm instantly unsettled and begin running around to the windows like a madwoman, trying to see if there's anyone around. My mum came out of her room at that point, asking what's going on, when the pounding began again. Like any logical woman, I stride into the kitchen, grab an enormous kitchen knife and fling the door open, intending to brandish it at whoever is attempting to break down my door and windows and ask them what the fuck they are doing. I came face to face with the police. I stared at them blankly for a very long moment before asking them what the hell they are doing on my door at 3 AM and why are they attempting to break my windows. They in turn asked me to set the knife down slowly if I could, and for me to step outside or invite them in. I demanded a badge number from both of them, and they kindly obliged and waited for me to phone 911 to confirm their identities before I let them in, which was incredibly nice of them to do. I looked like nothing short of a lunatic, seeing as I had just gotten up out of bed, had my hair wrapped, and had an enormous knife in my hand. Long story short, my sister was absolutely right. 2 teenage boys and an adult male had walked up onto the house shortly after I'd arrived home. The neighbour across the street called the police after she saw them attempt to open my car door, open our gate, then try the side door. The neighbour also reported seeing them try our large kitchen window before moving onto our garage, then onto the next neighbour's house, after which she called the police. The cops caught them robbing our next door neighbour's garage, and all 3 of them were armed to the teeth. Handguns, knives, zip ties, duct tape, the works. When the police asked them why they had tried to get into our house, knowing full well we were home, they answered that they'd been sitting on the neighbourhood for a while and knew that only women lived in the house. What could have happened to us that night still gives me the chills. When I was younger, I used to live in the Dominican Republic with my grandparents on my father's side, and his brother. My dad lived in the United States at the time. My uncle and I shared a bedroom. To clarify, I was a 7-year-old girl and my uncle was 9. And to get to it, you had to go through my grandma and grandpa's room. My room also had another door which led to the backyard. As a lot of you might know, the Dominican Republic can be really dangerous, especially at night when the lights go out. Because the country can't afford to always keep the electricity running, we have blackouts multiple times a day. Every day and mostly during the night time when most people are asleep, so nights are very, very dark. The The door in my bedroom that opened to the backyard always scared me because I could hear everything from outside, and it felt like someone could burst through the door and abduct me at any moment. The door was made of long planks of wood laid vertically next to each other. It was the type of wood that always looked like it's rotting. I think it actually was rotting. I faced my bed towards the door so that I could easily see if anyone tries to come through. Every night I would fall asleep from the boredom of staring at that door. My grandpa sympathized with me, and eventually he put a huge vintage wooden dresser in front of the door that he bought off the back of some guy's truck. The dresser was so thick and heavy that I instantly felt safer. It started the very first night. As a habit of looking in that direction as I fall asleep, I was staring at the dresser. It was weird to look in that direction now because it was pitch black. I could no longer see the little beams of moonlight between the cracks on the door, or hear the sounds of the wild animals in the yard or the late night traffic on the street. I remember it was nearing the season for tropical hurricanes, so some nights I could hear faint sounds of the trees swooshing and the door creaking. Some nights the door was louder, like it's finally breaking down from the pressure of the winds. My grandparents didn't see anything wrong with the door in the morning when I told them. I was scared it might be falling apart. We never thought anything of it after that. A few weeks later we had a huge storm. While I was trying to sleep I could hear banging and crackling and creaking and really loud whoosh and splash and thumps. Naturally I thought it was just the storm, and so did my uncle. Every night after the storm we kept hearing similar sounds late at night. It would wake us up. We knew it wasn't the storm anymore, but we would try to be logical and realistic. It was probably the old dresser. It was probably the door because it had got loose off its hinges. It was probably a stray cat scratching its paws on our door because the wood is soft. Cats have weird habits. It was my uncle trying to scare me. It was me trying to scare my uncle. We kept coming up with new excuses every night and blaming each other. All that was kept inside the dresser were blankets, towels, curtains and various linen for storage, so we never had a reason to look at ourselves. The dresser was tall and it had a divider in the middle. The left half had shelves where my grandma would fold the towels, and the right half had a hanging rack where she would hang curtains and sheets. Sometimes my grandma would complain that the blankets had dirt on them. She would blame my uncle and me, thinking we were wiping our hands on everything because we were too lazy to wash them. One night there was a louder than usual thump coming from the direction of the dresser. I woke up in a sudden panic, but my uncle was already wide awake. I immediately thought he was playing games and started yelling at him. My grandpa woke up and came to see what was going on. I told him my uncle woke me up because he was trying to scare me, but my uncle denied it, and he said he was woken up by all the noise outside. My grandpa didn't hear anything and told us to stop playing around and go back to sleep. As he started to walk back into his room, we heard another loud thump. My grandpa heard it too. We all got freaked out because that time it sounded like it was coming from inside the dresser. He went to the bathroom and got the oil lamp we keep there, turned it on and opened the dresser to look. We saw the hanging blankets and curtains move slightly, and right away we saw. My grandpa quickly stuck his hand in and moved the linen to the side. There was a woman in the dresser. She was a Haitian woman, really small and freakishly skinny. There was a big hole on the right side of the cardboard backing of the dresser. It didn't lead to the outside that we could see. The door was still there, but we instantly knew how she got inside from the position she was in, and when my grandpa opened the dresser, she was standing up with her knees slightly bent, facing towards the hole. Her hand was up and behind the hole, reaching up towards where the frame of the door would be. We could see her whole body, and I still remember what she was wearing. She had a long, flowing, sun-coloured skirt, a dark green or dark blue shirt that was too small for her so we could see her depraved belly. She had a rag on her head, but we could see her rough black hair sticking out through the gaps. I don't remember if she had any shoes, but I think she probably did. She also had a thin rope wrapped around her wrist all the way up to her elbow on her left hand. She was holding a plastic bag that had one or a few small things in it. When my grandpa had moved the blankets out of the way, she panicked and we heard that she had dropped something. It was a couple of nails and screws, the ones that were holding the door planks together. The plank became loose and she started to push it with her hands. That was the creaking noise we heard. After a few seconds of struggling, she finally pushed the plank down and started to fit her body through the crack in the door. Her head didn't fit right away, and my grandpa reached towards her and grabbed her arm. She bit him. She bit him so hard that she almost ripped off his skin. He was bleeding and she didn't let go until he let go of her first. She rammed her head through the door, and we could see how much it actually hurt her to force her head through because it made a very distinct scraping sound, and she yowled. She tripped over her skirt when she reached the other side of the door, but started to run. We had an outdoor sink, and she got on top of it. She climbed the wall that separated the backyard from the backyard of the people on the other side of the street. The wall was made of cinder blocks, and it was so old and abused that it had a bunch of holes and deformities in it. She used these to climb. While she was climbing, my grandpa ran out of our room, past his bedroom, the living room and dining room, and opened up the door to the backyard. We followed him, and as we ran by, my grandma woke up. By the time he got the back door open, the woman was more than halfway up the wall. He grabbed a machete he kept behind a broken washing machine we had in the yard, right next to the door, and ran towards her. He swung at her foot but missed by a few inches. At that exact moment, the electricity came back on, so all of the streetlights flickered and turned on. We could see her now. She reached the top of the wall and jumped to the other side. My grandma had followed us to the yard, but didn't get to see what was happening. She asked, and my grandpa just started swearing and yelling at the woman. We don't have free emergency services in the Dominican Republic, so there wasn't much we could do because we didn't have any money. No one was hurt in the end. We went to examine the door and the dresser and tried to figure out how exactly she got in there almost every night. The woman had removed the screws and nails on one of the planks on the door, cut a hole in the dresser and was staying in it. That woman was in our room almost every night for about 2 months, sleeping just a few feet away from us. We don't know if she ever stepped out of the dresser and walked around the rest of the home. We didn't go back to sleep for the rest of the night. Before the sun was fully risen, my grandpa was nailing down the door from both sides. He bought a sack of cement and covered the door with it from the outside. He also replaced another door on the side of the house, which led to the outside, as it was in the same condition as my bedroom door. We didn't see the woman after that again. I'm glad we did not meet any closer than we had to.